they're responding.
Good evening, everyone in the audience today and watching online. I'm calling to order the meeting of 2/22/2022 of Daytona Beach Shores City Council. Sherry, can you take a roll, please?
Mayor Miller,
Here.
Vice Mayor Lindauer,
Here.
Councilmember Bryan,
Here.
Councilmember Frislow,
Here.
Councilmember Platus.
Here.
Thank you. Reverend Bob? Reverend Bob, as you're coming up, I just wanted you to go over a little bit about the fantastic event that you had the Day of the Duels, and I'm so sorry I missed it, but I'm sure the Vice Mayor had a great time.
Yes, and I wanted to say a word of thanks to the City of Daytona Beach Shores, all of the staff, the council, and the great support that we receive every year, but especially this year as we are coming out of pandemic mode and getting back to doing things that we love doing together. The great support of the city for the annual Day of the Duels Motoring Festival at the Arriving Church, and our other partner in this is Halifax Urban Ministries, and it looks like we'll be sharing with them about $7,000.
Fantastic. And how were the canned goods donation?
We filled up at their van that they sent was completely full when they left that day, and then over the course of the weekend and yesterday we took 3 full carloads of food to the food pantry
Fantastic.
right here in Port Orange.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. All right, well, thank you. And thank you, Vice Mayor, for representing me.
Well,
Appreciate it.
that was my treat, thank you.
And the Legends, is that what it was on Monday?
Living Legends was Monday, yeah. That's always a wonderful show too, and the city offers equally fine support for that event as well.
Well, thank you so much. So,
And City Manager Booker came over to bring a special greeting, and we had a special greeting for him as well. So,
Nice.
great. Well, again, I'm sorry I missed it. Yes, so please lead us in prayer this evening.
yes, will you stand with me if you're able? Gracious God, we do gather together tonight, thankful for the wonderful week that we've had together during Race Week, and for the safety of the visitors who have come to this area to enjoy their time here, and for the great work of our law enforcement officers, and all working together to keep us safe and make sure that we can enjoy each other during this past week. And we look forward to more wonderful events. Our hearts do go out to those in our community who are hurting, who are suffering, who are lonely, who are hungry, and we hope that the efforts that we have made over this past week will help to alleviate some of that. We also bring our concerns for the people being affected by the growing tensions between Russia and Ukraine. And we take this moment to lift up to you our desires and our prayers for peace in that region, and peace in every place around our world that is affected by violence and war. Be with these elected officials as they conduct the business of our city. Be with us as we gather as neighbors and friends and interested parties, and bless the proceedings with your wisdom and your guidance. For these things we ask in your holy name. Amen.
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 Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We do not have any presentations this evening, so we'll go right on to the approval of the minutes. So we'll do these separately. First, the City Council minutes from January 25th, 2022. Do I have a motion to accept?
I move we accept the minutes of January 25th, 2022.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on any of those minutes? Okay, if not, Sherry, can you take a roll, please?
Vice Mayor Lindauer,
Yes.
Councilmember Frislow.
Yes.
Councilmember Pledis.
Yes.
Councilmember Bryan.
Yes.
Mayor Miller.
Yes, thank you. Okay, next we'll go on to the special meeting we had on February 1st, 2022, discussing Treasure Island. Do I hear a motion to accept those minutes?
Motion to,
Go, Rick.
motion to accept those minutes.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? If not, Sherry, can you take a roll on that?
Councilmember Frislow.
Yes.
Councilmember Pledis.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lindauer.
Yes.
Mayor Miller.
Yes, thank you.
Councilmember Bryan.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll go on to the consent agenda. We have 4 items on that this evening, and I just want you to make special note that D, the October finance report, the revised was mailed out to you, and we also received a copy of that. So with that being said, is there anything that we have to pull from that consent agenda? If not, can I have a motion to accept all 4 items?
I move we accept all 4 items on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Second, please.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on any of the items?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I had actually looked at it. Kurt, on the first page of the current year operational performance, it says cash investment positions performance, total all funds, and over in the right-hand corner on the bottom, it says 7%. Is that the yield or the return on investment of monies that were held in various investments, whatever we could do?
No, it's just a change from this month to last month.
Okay, so in other words, it could be more income and less expenses, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, with that being said then, any other discussion? If not, Sherry, can take a roll on that, please?
Vice Mayor Lindauer.
Yes.
Councilmember Bryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Pledis.
Yes.
Councilmember Frislow.
Yes.
Mayor Miller.
Yes, thank you. Okay, next we'll go on to the reports of our city attorney, and if you see, we have Attorney Wade here this evening. Thank you for joining us, and what do you have on your report for us?
Thank you very much, Mayor. Council members, good evening. My office's report for this evening, we have a number of items to share with you that we have worked on that have risen since your last meeting on January 25th. And of course, please let me know if you have any questions concerning any of these. During that time, our office provided a written opinion to the Public Safety Department regarding a question about interpretation of the statute providing an exemption to a public records request relating to a document in that office. Our office worked with the finance director for the purchase of the property behind the Chase Bank and reviewed and edited a proposed purchase agreement. We also finalized the closing documents, including the deed, and resolved title issues and conducted the closing for the sale of 136 Beachcomber. Our office also reviewed and worked on various matters relating to the opioid class action settlement. And our office reviewed a preliminary plat for the Oceans 25 townhouses and provided comments to the city planner on issues that need to be resolved before the plat can be approved. Our office also reviewed the current city manager contract and began negotiations with the assistant city manager regarding the new city manager contract. And finally, our office reviewed pending legislation that could potentially impact the city and provided an email update to the city council. And that's all I have, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions for Attorney Boyce?
Yeah, I have a question on the opioid. Do we know anything more about the opioid settlement as far as an estimated amount, whether it's positive or negative?
Sure. So I can tell you, I didn't speak with Becky and John specifically to what the latest. Most of this is kind of moving around paperwork at this point with regard to these, and so I don't have precise numbers with regard to where it is. I know there have been some parts, just from my experience with reps we represent as well. There's been a little bit of bumping around going on with all of this, but most of the process at this point is working through their paperwork process. They're doing this not just as a state of Florida settlement, but it evolved into a national settlement. They're settling with cities and counties, with states all over the country. So slow and with a lot of paperwork.
Any other questions?
Yeah, was there any significant issue with the plat review?
As far as, I spoke with John about that earlier today, nothing jumped out that was big red flag as far as he reported to me. I will just share with you generally, whenever there is a review, particularly of a preliminary plat, you'll find things where there was something missing, either the north arrow wasn't on there, or wasn't right, or what have you, or something else. Oftentimes we look at things like the appropriate easement language and so on. So nothing in particular jumped out. It was just comments back so that they could get back to their engineer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. If no other questions, we'll go on to our city manager. City Manager Booker, what do you have for us this evening?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, under economic development, I did attach some materials in the council briefing books about the Q breakfast that was recently held by the Volusia County Economic Development. There is a very positive impact, surprise, surprise, of tourism on our area. And our city, despite not having the hotels that we used to have, is still a very significant player in that industry. Shockingly, it generates $3.4 billion a year in local business other than accommodations, and that's a pretty significant number. Chase Bank has agreed kind of to the terms of the letter of intent to purchase the rear portion of their building. They're still wanting some restrictions on how we would use that property. If they don't want, obviously, any negative uses that would be negative towards the bank, as do we. The only thing we would do would be expand the warehouse, and we're trying to make that clear, and I know that our assistant city managers working diligently with them to try to work some of those things out. Treasure Island, the owners of Treasure Island, I understand, have issued an RFP for the demolition of the structure. And as this situation develops, I will keep the council informed of all the progress that happens on that front. And last but not least, because my wife is getting out of school on June 3rd, I've opted to bump up my retirement from July to June 3rd, which would be my last day with the city. So this is officially, I'm in my last 100 days now.
Wow.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Fred, can I ask you, do we have any other update on Treasure Island? Did we find out that they did get proposals, or is what the city manager said about the last we have? Do you want to step up and, sorry, sitting all the way in the back, I'm going to make you walk. It's okay.
Use the exercise.
Good evening, everybody. Fred Hyatt, Community Services Director. Yeah, all we've been getting is calls from potential bidders, and we actually did get one call from a bidder that was asking whether or not we would allow them to implode the building. So, but at this point, we don't know, what they're going to do. They were supposed to get all their bids in we heard by Friday, this past Friday, and then hopefully they'll analyze those, and they have to get those bids to us within 30 days. So I think February 2nd to March 2nd, they have the bids, but I think they're supposed to start, they're trying to get started in early March. And so if they can do that, that'll be well in advance of the 60-day that would trigger them to have to escrow any money. So I think that's the game plan.
Two questions. Are they allowed to implode?
Yeah, we don't have any regulations, as long as they're using the correct licensed person. And I don't actually know a lot about implosion, but if they get the low bid, then we'll be educating ourselves.
Right. And then the next question is, so after, once they identify who they're going to use, what is the next step? Do they come to us for permits, or can you walk me through that?
Right, they'll apply to the city for a demolition permit, and then we have some requirements to make sure all the utilities are already disconnected from the building, and so it'll just be a matter of making sure they've met all our other requirements and that they're using the appropriate waste hauler to take away the construction debris, and then they'll be ready to go. We'll issue the permit, and off they go.
Okay, and I think Kurt and I asked you this question the other day, but I'd like you to go over it with everyone. So any kind of asbestos, do they need a removal of that, or that was done when they?
Yeah, they conducted a asbestos survey when they did the stripping it down to basically the concrete. So, and there's nothing in the building anymore. There's no plumbing lines that could have asbestos wrapped around it. There's not anything. So they've done that previously and done the demolition. But, we don't do that at the city. The state, that would be their responsibility as a demo contractor if they felt they needed to do it. But I don't think that's going to be a problem for this.
Thank you. Any other questions for our community service director?
Yeah, are you aware of any state requirements that would impact
The
the demolition?
If they implode it or just demolition?
Any requirements?
I'm not aware of any specific because there's not any, sometimes when you have demolitions that occur over some underground utilities and things, there's Chapter 556, the Florida statute regulates that, but I don't think that's going to apply for this job.
Okay, thank you so much, Fred. Thanks, Mike. Okay, next we're going to go on to old business. So this is ordinance 2022-01. Attorney Voice, would you read that for us, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Ordinance number 2022-01, an ordinance of the City of Daytona Beach Shores, Volusia County, Florida, assigning the T public, quasi-public district zoning classification to property generally located at 3232 La Palanoa Avenue, short tax parcel ID 5335-01-09-01110, providing modification of the official zoning map, providing for implementing administrative actions, providing for non-application, and providing for effective date. It's before you tonight for second reading.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I just want to announce this is our second reading, but it's also a quasi-judicial. So we are going to follow every one of the steps that you would for a public hearing. So first of all, opening the public hearing, I want to ask anyone if they had ex parte communication with anyone on this subject. Anyone on the dais? Okay, thank you. Okay, City Clerk, would you please swear in anyone who will be speaking during this hearing? So that would be our city staff, anyone that is here from Westminster Church, anyone that's speaking at all. Would you please just raise your hand and our City Clerk will swear you in.
Please stand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth during this hearing tonight?
Thank you, City Clerk. Okay, next we'll go with our city staff presentation. Stuart, what do you have for us, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have much to add aside from what I mentioned and the staff report that you see in your packet that was submitted also at the last public hearing, except that, we are still recommending approval. We believe that as staff, the professional staff of the city, that all the requirements for the rezoning of this property have been met. I know there's a team from the church here tonight, and they can speak about things that they're offering voluntarily to improve the situation there. But aside from that, staff is still recommending approval of this particular application.
Thank you. And any questions for Stuart? Okay, if not, does the applicant have a presentation or is anything anyone would like to speak on? Please identify yourself.
Good evening. I'm Laura Bond Walker. I'm the Administrative Director for the Counseling Center. In terms of things that we have done voluntarily, sorry. In terms of things that we have done voluntarily, we did obtain a quote for a privacy fence, which was one of the things we had suggested or offered that might help mitigate the concerns of the neighbor. We have that quote and have obtained that, so we can give it to you if you'd like. We've also created a brick walkway with signage, and the introduction for anyone who is coming to that office for the first time is that it is an adjunct to the Westminster Church, and they should go to that church park in the rear parking lot and walk across a paved pathway to the porch. So those are the things that we've worked on to try and make sure that we've addressed the concerns for privacy and separatism.
Okay, and once you accept one of the bids, do you know what the time frame would be to get that fence installed?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, the white fence can be, have you looked into including some greenery at some point in time?
Some greenery?
Yeah.
Yeah, we tried to match a similar fence that's on the adjacent property, and we could also add some landscaping, something to supplement it.
And that would be something that you would be agreeable to?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone in the public that wants to speak in favor of this issue? Okay, if not, is there anyone that wants to speak against the issue? If you could come up, please.
Hi, I'm here again because I'm a little unhappy about the way that this whole process has gone. I feel like everybody was backtracking because they thought that it was public property already, including my own house. So you guys approved something that wasn't even accurate at first, so I didn't even really get a chance to know that that was going on, or else I would have came to that meeting and opposed to that as well, making it a counseling center. You know, I am also here because whenever we went to the last meeting and you approved that lady's letter that lives across from the church, stating that she doesn't see any difference or whatever, you never input anybody else's letters that they wrote, or the phone calls, or the people that showed up at the first meeting. We never took that into account. So I don't know why just that one lady was able to make such a big difference in that decision. You know, when there was multiple people that opposed it. I'm also here because you guys didn't ever really bring up too much besides the first meeting where you guys weren't there, about how the people that go to the counseling center are mandated by the state to go there. And sometimes that means that they got their child taken away for doing drugs, or for beating their children, or for any other circumstance of, you know, just things that would be really uncomfortable living next door to with my own 3 children. A fence doesn't really, you know, keep those people from being right next door to my house. I might not see them, but that doesn't mean that they're not there. You know, looking in my son's window, which is 10 feet away. You know, I mean, I personally worked at a daycare center, and I saw the people that would come in that got their kids taken away for doing heavy drug use and all that kinds of stuff. You know, they would come there to visit their children, and they had to go to all those counseling centers, you know, to try to get their children back. And, you know, she was high all the time, you know, and even though she went to counseling services and did the things that the court mandated, you know, she was pregnant again, doing drugs, overdosing, the guy died, you know, like it's heavy stuff, and you're putting that right next door to my house, you know, and you guys aren't really bringing that up. I mean, whenever I talked to my lawyer, she told me that you guys are the ones that approached the church. And it wasn't even really the church's idea. I mean, I think that I understand that you're very close with the church, but you know, you're not really listening to the people who actually live in Daytona Beach Shores. But I live and will live probably forever right next door to that house. And these are my children that are gonna grow up there, and I personally feel like you guys are putting them in danger. I don't know all those people that live or that are gonna be going to counseling next door. Have they gotten their children taken away? Have they beaten their children? Or done really heavy drug use? Do they still do it when they go there? You know, I have no idea. So,
Are we allowed to ask questions on this?
We don't normally allow that, but we will in a minute. Stuart, can you verify, did we approach the church, or did the church approach us? My understanding was they approached us, but.
That is absolutely incorrect. Mr. Pete Zahn, who is a member of the church, can attest that he wrote a letter after a consultation with staff that they wanted to go ahead and use the property for counseling center, and this was, I believe, early last year.
All right, thank you. So just make sure, you know, like when when someone comes up here, I mean, I feel so bad for you, but I want to make sure that we have accurate information. So please, when you're coming up here stating something, because I think there was something last time too that was inaccurate, that you did your due diligence to, give us the correct information.
I understand it, and whenever she told me that,
I'm sorry, who is she?
the lawyer that was here for me the first time, she had stated to me that she had seen the first email whenever she got the records request had come from the city. And so she questioned whether it really came, like, if it was the city who started going into it or if it was the church.
Okay. And then our councilman wants to ask you, but I have one question. I think this has been in effect, how long has it been open right now? A couple
I
months?
believe since September of last year.
Okay. Have you had any incident of anything happening, like somebody from the counseling center ending up in your yard, in your son's window, anything that they've crossed over into the church pertaining to your yard that you can prove? I mean, so it's been open now about almost 6 months. Have you had any incident in the past 6 months?
I mean, I've had someone stop in front of my house and walk across my yard to get to there. I mean, I wasn't taking pictures because I wasn't expecting it, but I've had that happen. And then I can see whenever I open the blinds to my son's window, the people coming and going from the counseling center next door. I mean, am I going to stare out his window to see who's staring inside? No, I'm not.
Again, I'm just trying to think, I know, in some churches churches I've been to before, Wednesday night is a big night that they have services, and sometimes they have off groups in an off building and some of the things. So, I'm just trying to understand. I don't know those people that are in the building on a Wednesday night, what their background is, what they've done. So, if you saw something that happened, absolutely, we would be investigating that, and we'd be a little bit more intent on that. But, so it's been 6 months, and so right now you're just thinking of something that could happen. Is that correct?
I mean, yes, and I know that whenever you say that there is things and programs that happen inside of the church.
Well, no, and where I go to, they had like it was called a highway house. So, and it was even further away than what you're talking about right now. So they either had teenagers there, off groups on a Wednesday night, and it was right next to a house. And I can't guarantee those teenagers that were in that group what they were doing or what their background was. So, I really, really feel for you, but I'm almost thinking, there might be a problem here. We're trying to find a solution when we really have not identified a problem.
I think that, that's something that's a little more serious as far as like my children are concerned, because, whenever you were raising your children, I'm sure you wouldn't want anything around them to pose danger to them.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah, and so that's where I'm at right now, is I feel like you're doing that by allowing them to do it right next door to my house. At least in the church, they enter in down Peninsula, that's their own entity. That's 7,000 square feet of area that they could do that in. I'm not sure why they're doing it right next door to my house. It makes it very uncomfortable it would be uncomfortable for anyone, not just for me. I mean, for any of you guys on the council, I'm pretty sure whenever you were raising your children that you wouldn't want that right next door to your house. There's just a bunch of people coming and going that are mandated by the state to be there.
Okay. All right, did you have one more question, or did I answer that?
I have a question. You did a phenomenal job. I have a question for the folks of the church.
All right, thank you very much, we appreciate it.
She can stay there if she wants.
What is the question, and we'll see who is best able to answer it.
What was the genesis of providing the counseling? What was the genesis of making this happen?
And who would best be able to answer that?
We can't hear you. I'm sorry. What was the genesis of making this happen? Where all of a sudden you've got someone who's next to you and you've decided to open this up for counseling. What was the genesis of making that happen?
There were two precursors to that. One was, well before COVID, we had two therapists who worked from that house. It was formerly the associate pastor's residence, and then there was a bequest made from one of the members of the church to support Presbyterian Counseling Center. He had been a member of our board for some time, and so his objective was to help support counseling services made available at the south end of the peninsula. The house was used for about 6 months pre-COVID. It was closed until we started again October of this past year.
So if I may, you were doing this prior? So this was an ongoing?
It was back 2019. I could look for dates, but basically it stopped. With COVID, it was shut down and everyone went to remote therapy. But it had been in operation at that time for about 6 months. We resumed in October of this year. The other piece of that was a grant from the United Way that we obtained in July of this year. It was predicated on serving the community and building healthy families. And so having something that was a household type setting where people could come to a home setting with their children, have a play space, a fenced yard. It was more like a home setting for working with children birth to 5 and their families, parenting support groups, as well as teens and adults. So using that space, that was what we anticipated when we applied for the United Way grant. And so that's why we reapproached it with the city.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question. Is her statement correct that these people are all sent by the state for being offenders?
No, a very small percentage of people are mandated by the court to take parenting support classes, and they come to our Circle of Security Parenting, but that's probably 5% or fewer of our total people that we bring into the center, and even fewer probably at this particular location.
Thank you. Okay, we're ready to hear closing statements from our staff right now. Do you have any closing statements?
Nothing that the city is, except that the city staff's recommending approval.
Okay, I'm going to close the hearing right now, the public hearing. Is there any other council discussions among ourselves?
Yes, madam. One of the things that influenced me greatly was the fact that 9 neighbors signed a petition saying they had no problem with it and they had no incidents. And I confirmed that with the captain, asked him if there were any incidents at that property at all, and he said no. So that's a big influence on me.
Although it's been only going on.
I'm sorry, man, you can't speak. You can't
I
talk.
like to speak to people who actually live in Daytona Beach Shores.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, for public record, you have to come back up here, but I did close the hearing. I'll allow you to make one last comment if you'd like, but it has to be from the podium here, because it has to be for public record, please.
Okay. The house was being used as a house for pastors and for people that were pertaining to the church to be lived in for years. And then, whenever they submitted their application, they completely lied and said it was going to be used for an office all of a sudden. And then come to find out it was for a counseling center. Nobody ever submitted the right application for this or anything, okay? And that is correct because I tried to bring it and hand them out to you last time, but you're like, no, I don't want your paperwork. No, thank you, I already have it. So.
I'm sorry, who said that? Who said?
You, ma'am. You didn't want my paperwork, or you don't want to hear anything that I have to say on a daily basis.
Okay, and that's not true, but let me ask you a question. Now that we found out, that it's less than 5% that's mandated, does that help ease you at all?
It does not, because it doesn't matter if it's 5% or more. It's still people that could be doing heavy drug use or beating their children. There's still a percentage that they could be right next door to my house. Like, luckily, it's not somebody that molests children, but even if there's a 1% chance, that's not right to put that right next door to someone that's trying to raise a family. I mean, to anyone, really, but I'm trying to raise my kids, and you guys are just throwing people right next door to my house that are mandated because they did something terrible to their own children.
Okay, thank you. Okay, my only, comment is that, again, as a mother of children, I feel for her too, but I don't see any basis for this at this time. I'm sure we'll watch it closely. I want a commitment from our police chief and our captain, that we monitor the situation. I feel like the church has gone over and above, with the fence, with the greenery, posting the signs. So at this time, I don't see an issue, although, I really do feel it. I'm so sorry, I don't remember it all. Normally, I will take any paperwork, I think I've been more than accommodating. You had 3 minutes, I probably gave you 5 or 6, because I do feel for you. Does anyone else have any other comments?
I do. I agree with the mayor. This is a very difficult situation and a very difficult vote. I want to thank Vice Mayor Lindauer for also jumping in here too. So, you do have our attention. I will say it's a very difficult vote. I would not want to live next to them either. I can tell you that right now. There's 0 chance I would. So I understand what you're saying. That being said, there could be any element of person that lives next to you that is undesirable, which you can't control. I mean, you must realize, given such close proximity, you can have teenage boys running around that are not in counseling that could be just as bad and dangerous as people who are in counseling. So you have to understand that element of it as well. That being said, as long as I'm up here, I understand your situation, and I will tell you if there are problems and things do come up and arise that are not okay, you have my commitment that I will do something about it. And that's as best as I can tell. It is a very difficult vote. I do feel for you, as Mayor Miller does, and Vice Mayor Lindauer does as well, obviously doing the due diligence that we need to do. So my heart does go out to you, but having said that, all I can say to you is that there's always bad elements that can move in next to you, and I think these people have their heart in the right place. I really do believe that. There's no question about it. If in fact things go awry, you've got a phenomenal police chief, you've got a phenomenal police captain, and I can tell you right now, there's members on this council who will support you.
Amen.
Okay, do we hear a motion?
Motion to accept.
I'd like to second it, but with the following amendments, that there be an installation of a privacy fence and landscaping to accommodate the privacy of the neighbors.
Okay, so, Councilman, so it's already up and running. Are we going to say a time frame, like after they get the bed, X amount? I mean, we can't say.
9 months is fine. I think
Okay.
it's more than enough time to get permits and get it done.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt. Just a point of clarification to the city attorney in terms of rezoning applications as to whether or not conditions such as that could be made.
And I was going to jump right
Yeah,
in
okay.
and wrap that there. I very much appreciate the thought and the sentiment with regard to it. With regard to what we have before us, which is a straight zoning application and a proposed straight zoning change. Unfortunately, approving a zoning change with conditions is not something that Norwalk contemplates. And that's...
Well, then why did somebody put option number 2 that said I could?
Yeah, I appreciate your frustration with that.
Well, let's do this. I'll second the motion as Rick had approved it, and the representatives of the church have already indicated they're going to voluntarily do that. Hopefully, they'll do the right thing, which I'm sure they will, and I'll be good with that. And if not, I'm sure this young lady will come back and
You have every right. If things don't go well, come back. I'm telling you right now, come back. I've got this down pretty good. I understand what's going on. I think the mayor's done a good job. I think you have a very friendly council here. So if there are problems, come back.
No other discussion. Sharon, can you send the roll, please?
Councilmember Frislow?
Yes.
Councilmember Plogus?
Yes.
Councilmember Bryan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lindauer?
Yes.
Mayor Miller?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, next we're going to go on to new business, and we talked about this a little bit at our last meeting. So about 8 or 9 months ago, we understood that the Bank of America, while they had moved out previously, never reopened again. I'm sorry.
It's the charter amendment first. Ordinance 2022-5 is MA.
We've got discussion of the Bank of America property.
That's prudent agenda we have in front of us as the charter amendment last.
I apologize.
Is that okay?
It's okay.
It's okay. Yeah.
We're going to get to it. Under F.
Mine is in a different,
Okay.
so I.
Oh, okay.
Does everybody have the Bank of America under A?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so just giving you a little background, we talked about it last year, and we didn't get a favorable response, but now we're back again that they're taking bids, and Kurt's going to tell us a little bit about why this is a valuable piece of property for the city to control. The only way that we can control what goes there is to own it. Because if we don't, if someone goes in, an undesirable that it's zoned for, we have no control at that time. And we had discussed previously, what are we going to do with this property? We don't know exactly. We have several different options. If anyone's been to the community center lately, it's busting out at the seams. That a lot of the classes we can't hold here because they're double booked. That could be something we can do there. Perhaps we can lease it out to someone like we did previously. It's just, and Kurt's going to show us, it just makes sense where it is in relationship to McElroy Park. So if you can show us that, Kurt, and then we'll have a discussion.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Madam Mayor, you just stole all my thunder.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I have a very short PowerPoint, and based on the direction from council at the last meeting to bring this back, staff's belief is, the question before you tonight is, does the city want to buy the Bank of America property? So let me run through a few quick slides and a few points relating. Last, I believe it was June or July, when this was first brought up, council directed staff to try and find a partner to either jointly purchase it or have them purchase it and we lease back or something like that. We did have extended talks with Halifax Hospital, and unfortunately at this point in time, they have so many other capital projects already going on that it's just not in their budget to do something at this point in time. And then the other thing is, to the mayor's point, if this is under city ownership, the city controls what is put on that property in the future. So it is actively listed on the market on bankcentersforsale.com. The bid, you'll see the red at the bottom, bids are due March 10th. I believe at the last meeting I told you March 20th, but you'll see it here, it is March 10th. It is a modified sealed bid process. What I talked to the listing agent, and what they say that is the first bid is a sealed bid, but then they're going to go back to the top three and say, hey, you can sharpen your pencil and see if you want to bid a little more or change your bid in some way. I do not know if they will share what the highest bid is or anything at that point. He did not offer that up, so I'm assuming they are not going to do that. But if they do later on, I may have to come back to council if council so chooses to proceed. But that's the process. So it is actively on the market. We've gotten, I believe, at least one call inquiring about the property and what it is zoned for and those kind of things. Property in question, I think we're all very familiar with that property, but you see it highlighted in yellow here. The one thing, to the mayor's point, is why would the city be interested in this property? And I think this next map will be self-explanatory. It's adjacent to our existing public safety and park complex. So you see we have a very good sized piece of property that this is adjacent to, and the impact of what that property could have on our community, our public safety building. As you're well aware, that also is the Halifax Urgent Care, Radiology, plus our park behind it, and the impact that whatever that may be used for in the future could impact activities in the park. So I went over this with Stuart, and if you have questions on this, I'm going to ask Stuart to come up. This is not my realm, but there's a series of permitted principal uses, and I underlined one of them because service establishments, while our code lists the items you see here before you, service establishments can be broadly defined to include things as a car wash, a massage parlor, and other things that we may find very unfavorable to have at that location. One other piece that I wanted to point out is our code also allows for special exceptions. I don't see most of these going there, but one thing I wanted to point out is that if somebody else wins this property and comes before this council with a special exception, I'm sorry, I just said that wrong. This will never come before the council based on our current code. It will only go before the Planning and Zoning Board. The way our code reads right now is special exceptions are heard only by Planning and Zoning. So this council, or if it's 5 years from now, a future council, will never hear if it's a special exception. So at some point in time, the code was changed to allow that to be that way in the process. So I just want you to be aware that one of the reasons to have control of this property is these things that we would probably consider undesirable. Like, do we want to see, for example, beach concession vehicle parking there? I don't think that's what we want right in the heart of our town. So the question again before you is, are we interested in talking about this property and purchasing it and making an offer? So if yes, the process is that staff with the city attorney would prepare a purchase and sale agreement that would be brought back to you on March 8th. That's our next regular meeting, and that's the closest meeting we have to the bid date, so that we'll keep the number. You'll see I have number 2 in there. No discussion tonight on an offer amount. I don't want to telegraph our bid 2 weeks or more, I guess it's more than that, almost 3 weeks in advance of that bid date. Obviously, I double-checked with the attorneys and to see if there was any way possible to do this in a shade meeting, and unfortunately, there's not.
So even though it's a sealed bid, ours is not.
Yeah, ours is not necessarily a truly sealed bid. If somebody knows the city may be interested, they can listen to the meeting and outbid us. However, so having said that, if council directs us tonight, staff, I'll work with Becky. I've been going back and forth with Becky on the other purchase, so I'm assuming I'll be dealing with Becky. And then we'll bring it back on the 8th. If you approve it, it's an email submittal, so I'll submit it on the 9th. Unfortunately, there's no time on the bid on the 9th. It just says they're due, on the 10th. It just said bids are due March 10th, not by 5 p.m. or anything, so I'm assuming midnight on March 10th. And then I don't know the timing of when they will officially open and respond to the bids. So that's kind of where we're at. Council directed us to bring it back, so we're looking for, if that is indeed the case, we'll do that process.
And this is time for discussion, so Councilman Frizzle, what question do you have?
Is it win or lose, top drawer? Do they take the top 5? The top?
I was told top 3, and then top 3 get to rebid.
So $1,900,000, $800,000, and all 3 we're in the arena, as long as we're in the top 3.
I mean, if we're in the top 3, that's what I was told by the listing agent. Yes.
Thank you. That's it's not pass or fail.
Right.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, and there's no guarantee they have to accept any of the bids, right?
Correct. Correct. They could throw them all out and say, we're gonna, just list it on the market and, look for offers that way. But it appears that Bank of America is using them for quite a few properties. They have 10 Florida banks right now, but there were hundreds across the country that were on this particular website.
And what role does JLNL have in here?
They are technically a listing agent. And that's Jones
LaSalle.
Lang LaSalle or LaSalle Lang?
Very big.
It's what they do, yeah. They're in the business.
Mayor?
Yes.
Yes.
A couple of things I'd like to point out. The city, in general, does not want to own property. We've had precedent for doing this when it's in our best interest. For instance, the 2900 property we owned, and we now have 25 condos going in, or townhomes going in there, which are going to give us a nice tax base increase. And we also controlled who owned the new owner of the recent mall that we just did, if you want to call it a mall, the 5
Strip mall.
The
Yeah,
136
the
feet.
strip mall.
Sure.
So there is precedent, and I think that when the city has a vested interest that is going to better the community, and we are going to control who and what goes in there, I think that it behooves us to do that. Not just go out and buy properties, but when there's a property like that, that the city could do a lot of things with, or control who goes in there and make sure that it's something that is going to benefit the city. I think that it makes sense for us to do that.
Madam Mayor, may I?
Yes.
I can't agree with Vice Mayor Lindauer more. I think that it is very important, just like with Oceans 25 and the strip mall, that we don't want to be owning property just for the sake of owning property. But given that this is right in the heart of town, it gives us the ability, as Melso did a great job articulating, it gives us control over who can go in there. And, you know, again, I don't want to point fingers at any businesses that may not, you know, we may not want, but there may be some businesses that the residents don't want. And I believe in my heart that we owe the residents, more than anybody else, the best way of life here in the Shores. And so by having control of that, it gives the residents a say, it gives us a say in what goes there, so that life can truly remain better here.
Thank you. No other discussions? Do we just go across and do a yes or no?
You're looking for guidance.
Yeah, looking for guidance, so I'd prefer a vote to have you bring it back.
Okay, starting with Councilman Bryant.
I do have a question. How do you plan to come up with a price?
I'm hoping that in individual conversations, without being a conduit, that there will be a average price. I will have to walk a fine line in communicating with each of you without violating sunshine to come up with that number. So that will be, you'll be hearing from me, depending on your direction tonight. Each of you will get a phone call and we'll be having a discussion.
So Councilman Breyer, yes or no?
Huh?
Are you a yes or, we're going to give him directions?
I'm asking a couple of questions.
Oh, you have a couple, I'm sorry.
At this point in time, we have no identified use of the building, right?
Correct.
And in general, that if one were going to buy that for the land, it would be worth about half of what one would pay for the land and the building, in terms of what the appraisals are and what the property appraiser is and so on. So I just want to, the question is, that's the case, right?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact ratio, but it was, I think it was more like 45, 65 on the land to building value. But yes, I mean, there is definitely a land value and a building value, and that will be part of the discussion with each of you what that number is.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I would point out, Richard, that the building doesn't have to be demolished. A bidder may want that building and may want to remodel the building for their own personal use, whatever that is. So it's not a given that the building is going to come down.
I wasn't saying that. I was just making what I think is an obvious statement, that somebody is going to use the building, that property is worth more than if somebody is going to tear it down, just use the land.
I'm sorry, you're just backwards to me. If they own the building and the land, and they decide they want to use the building, then the building is valuable. If, on the other hand, they want to knock it down because they think the land is more valuable, then that's their option. But it's not a given that it's going to come down, in my opinion. It probably will, but it's not a given. So I don't think we should base the bid on the fact that it's coming down. That's just my opinion.
Councilman Bryan, did you have another question for?
No, that's it.
Okay. Can you tell us if you're a yes or no?
Yeah, I think they should explore buying the property.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, so do I.
Yes, I'm also a yes.
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 Thank you. Is that what you need?
Got clear direction, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we're going to go on to rezoning application RZ. Attorney Wade, do you have to read that before I say that this will be continued, or how do we go on these next couple? So we're on new business of B in our folder.
And I'm trying to track, I don't know that I have those ordinance titles here anyways. I will ask. In some of my jurisdictions I do, and some I don't. There is no legal requirement that the title be read.
All right.
When you're going to continue.
All right, so let me just tell you, this is rezoning application for Colby and Jennifer Cardwell, 6 Carter Terrace. Unfortunately, the notice did not appear as it should, so normally we would have put it on to our next location, our next date, which would be March 8th. But this does need to go before P&Z before it comes to us. P&Z does not meet till March 14th, so we will be continuing this to March 22nd.
Motion.
Yes, actually.
I move we continue.
Second.
Okay, I want to continue it too to March 22nd.
We need to do a vote.
Okay, call for a vote.
Councilmember Bryan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lindauer?
Yes.
Councilmember Plius?
Yes.
Councilmember Frislow?
Yes.
Mayor Miller?
Yes, thank you. Okay, next we'll go, and this will be the same thing. This will be rezoning Larry and Barbara Pollock, 3102 Liberty Street, Annex property. Do I hear a motion to continue this to March 22nd?
I move we continue.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Not sure, we'll take a roll on that, please.
Councilmember Bryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Frislow?
Yes.
Councilmember Plius?
Yes.
Mayor Miller?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lindauer?
Yes.
Okay, next we have future land use map amendment for Colby and Jennifer Cardwell, 6 Carter Terrace. And all of these are just formalities to let you know, but it is a process that we do need to follow. So do I hear a motion to continue that to March 22nd?
I move we continue.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Sherry, can you take a roll?
Councilmember Bryan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lindauer?
Yes.
Councilmember Plius?
Yes.
Councilmember Frislow?
Yep. Yes.
Thank you. The next one is future land use for Larry and Barbara Pollock at 3102 Liberty Street, an annexed property. Can we continue that till March 22nd? Do I hear a motion?
I move we continue.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Sure, can you take a roll on that one?
Councilmember Bryan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lindauer?
Yes.
Councilmember Plius?
Yes.
Councilmember Frislow?
Yes.
Mayor Miller?
Yes, thank you. Okay, next we're going to go on to our last item of new business, and this is ordinance 2022-05, Daytona Beach Shores proposed charter amendments. And Attorney Vos is going to come down and speak to us on all of these, as he did the first time when we went through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, good evening. I thought it'd be better to come on down here and just be able to make eye contact with you when we can speak about this ordinance. I'll go ahead and first read the title and then dive into what we're going to be talking about tonight. Ordinance number 2022-05, an ordinance of the City of Daytona Beach Shores, Florida, proposing amendments to the Daytona Beach Shores City Charter, providing for referenda under proposed charter amendments, providing for ballot titles and ballot summaries for such referenda, providing for direction to the city clerk in coordination with the Volusia County Supervisor of Elections, and providing for findings, conflicts, severability, and effective date. And this is before you tonight on first reading. Council members, as you may recall, it was many months ago, it was last calendar year, that we had met a brief number of times to discuss charter amendments that you all would consider putting on the ballot. And when we had talked about it, you all had decided that you didn't want to have a special election in 2021 to spend that additional money to do it. So you put it on an election in 2022. And so here we are much closer to those elections. You have 2 elections coming up in 2022 within Volusia County in August, the primary election, and November, the gubernatorial general election. And the ordinance for you right now is set up to go on the November election. And that was the first thing I wanted to double check with you all. I recalled looking back at our notes that was where you all were going before. I will tell you that is generally when you get more voters out, then it's a roll of the dice who shows up at a primary election. So it is made out for the November election. What you have in this ordinance are 5 charter questions that were put together after discussions that we had all had concerning different tweaks to the charter. They look very similar to the version you all had looked at last year. I will tell you when, and it's one thing I do like to do, letting language rest a little while. I let it rest a long time on these. And so I can tell you at least on one of them, the one relating to the amending the charter to provide for city purchasing to be governed by council-approved purchasing policies. I did do some additional tweaks to the actual ballot question. Because when I looked at that, it occurred to me that it wasn't as clear as it could be. So it I think, expresses precisely what you all were getting at before, but I think I tuned it up a little bit more. So if you all will indulge me, I'm just going to walk through very quickly the 5 questions and get any feedback you all may have. And of course, that feedback could be, it's been a year, we thought about it, not particularly interested in that question anymore or anything like this. So, and that is, even on first reading here tonight, I prepared the title for this ordinance such that if you wanted to, for example, rip one out or anything like that, we can accommodate that and keep on trucking to second reading. So if there aren't any questions, I will move on to question 1. And you have it in writing before you here, but I'm going to read it aloud. Again, sometimes things pop up when you hear it versus seeing it on paper. So question 1. City charter amendment, increasing number of council member votes necessary to remove a council member from misconduct. Shall the city charter be amended to increase from 3 council members to 4 council members the number of affirmative council member votes necessary to investigate and remove a council member from misconduct? As y'all may recall, this was a matter that had come up and been discussed before, and we worked through some versions of the language here, and this is what we have before you right now. If there aren't any questions or tweaks,
You want an okay on each one of these individually?
I'm sorry?
You want an okay on each one of these individually?
What I was more thinking is if there's an objection on any of them or any tweaks or what have you, it might be best to raise it then, and then you all can sort it out. I'm going to start from the presumption that all of these in some form are moving forward unless you tell me otherwise. So if there aren't any comments concerning that, move on to question 2. City charter amendment eliminating a specific meeting time for city council organizational meetings. Shall the city charter be amended to remove the requirement that the organizational meeting of the city council must start at 7 p.m.? As you all know, your meetings are at 6 p.m., but somebody put in the charter that your organizational meeting is at 7 p.m., and that leads to some procedural issues. Ultimately a minor issue, but something that can be cleaned up, particularly if there's already going to be a ballot printed. So, are there any questions or concerns about this one?
Fine with that one.
All right. Moving on to...
So it can be any time then?
That's right. It's simply going to be deleting the language that says at 7 p.m. And so it will then read, if passed, the organizational meeting of the city council shall be held at council members or as otherwise designated by motion of the city council at the first regularly scheduled city council meeting of the municipal. So it'll just be at the time that meeting is set. Move on to question 3. And I will warn you in advance, I struggled with this one a little bit just because there's a bunch of numbers and it's unfortunate. So we did our best to try to make it somewhat clear. It's okay for legal sufficiency, but
understanding.
It can get a little bit heavy. City charter amendment revising timelines for referenda on citizen-initiated charter amendments. Shall the city charter be amended to revise timelines for holding referenda on I apologize. This speaking, start over.
We have them in front of us, so.
What's that?
We have them in front of us, so.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and start over the whole thing.
Okay.
City Charter Amendment, revising timelines for referenda on citizen-initiated charter amendments. Shall the city charter be amended to revise timelines for holding referenda on citizen-initiated charter amendments? To provide that such referendum be held at the next general election, if it is within 120 days, rather than 90 days, after certification of petitions, or otherwise within 90 days, rather than 60 days, after certification of petitions. Again, a little bit cumbersome, but unfortunately, the law governing ballot referenda and ballot summaries really favors providing a before and after for voters to understand what's going on. So that's what kind of drove a little bit of that, have a little bit more specificity.
So this is more of a legal issue for us.
It is, and as I will tell you, as a very practical matter, if it ended up being that this didn't pass, and so we'd have the old deadlines within the charter, and there was a citizen-initiated charter amendment, which is, it happens, but it is a rare circumstance. If that occurred, it may come to be that that information comes in, we troop to the supervisor of elections office and say, aha, this has happened, our charter says you've got to do it within 90 days or 60 days. And the supervisor's going to say, that's nice. Your charter says that, but state law says, I've got to do these things for any election. And those timelines are in excess of these. So in the end, what the supervisor is going to do is comply with this the best they can, but they're going to comply with state law first. And that's how it would work out.
And also, the purpose of this is to save money through the general election, so there's no additional cost to the city. Is that
That's exactly right. This seeks to open up the window of time where something would delay to an election where you're already getting a free ride on that. If there are not any questions on this one, we'll go ahead and proceed on.
Is it worth saying that this is to comply with state law in the explanation?
We tend to stay away from phrases that sound persuasive in any way, because it's not that the current language is illegal.
No.
Okay.
Be consistent with state law is what it's.
Yeah.
I think, in my opinion, when we discussed this, one of the main reasons was if you've got a general election coming up pretty soon, you don't want to have a special election that we have to pay for when we get.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying that if state law is a little different than this, it may be more, some you call it persuasion, but it may be more incentive for somebody to vote for it if they understand that it's to make us consistent with state law.
And I appreciate the point. And if frankly, if the statutory provision in Chapter 166 provided more exact timeline guidance on it, it's exactly how to phrase it, to conform it to it or what have you. Unfortunately, they leave it very broad and amorphous with that. And then what you have with the state election code is a mess that this new one will fit into kind of by luck and fiat, because we're pushing it past those days. Okay?
So you're saying
So
that-
I appreciate the thought. I'm hesitant to recommend putting in language along those lines.
Any other questions? Okay, ready for question 4?
Moving on to question 4. Question 4, Citizen Charter Amendment providing for city purchasing to be governed by council-approved purchasing policies. Shall the city charter be amended to remove specific bidding and purchasing procedures from the charter and provide that city purchasing, contracting, bidding, and expenditures will be governed by city ordinances, policies, and procedures as approved and updated by the city council? As I mentioned, this is the one I did a little tuning up to, and I would welcome it. We talked about this before. This would be the one, if anybody was looking at this and say, hey, what sort of fast one are they trying to pull here? You're not, obviously. Trying to take what are some provisions here in the charter that are very kind of lockstep to a very particular point in time with particular numbers and do what most other local governments have, which is you have a purchasing ordinance, purchasing policies and so on that would govern all these things. It would ultimately be under you, the elected representatives of the folks, under your control. You will do it so that when staff is implementing all of this, it's going to be ultimately under your direction.
May I ask you on page 8 with all the line throughs, was that what it originally said, or is this the line throughs you did after you relooked at it?
No, all those line throughs were in the previous version that we had before. And that was, as the first part of it says, remove specific bidding and purchasing procedures. That's the removal, deleted. And then it's that other provision that's added that specifies that it would be all governed by ordinance and policies and procedures that are all subject to your approval and amendment.
And I'm sure you have done this, but with all the different cities that you've worked with, if you see something that's totally out of line what we're doing compared to other cities, you would have called that out to us, correct?
With regard to
any of these that we're trying to change?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
And again, I would tell you, to move in this direction would be moving much more into the norm and the mainstream. And by the way, this tends to be a common type of change that you see when you're reviewing charters that maybe this issue hadn't been looked at in a long time. This is a common issue. Any other questions concerning this? All right. With that, then, I'll move on to question 5, final question. City Charter Amendment, renaming City Council to City Commission. Shall the City Charter be amended to rename the City Council to the City Commission, City Council members to City Commissioners, and Mayor Council member to Mayor, with such changes having no effect on the powers, duties, or compensation of such officials? As you all recall, we talked about the issue of changing the names here and the perception among some folks that those two terms, council member and commissioners, somehow have any sort of legal significance. Perhaps at one time, long before I started practicing law, they did, but they do not now. And so that is why there is an explanatory clause at the end, because it is an absolutely truthful legal statement that by changing those titles, it makes no changes to the powers, duties, or compensation of the officials. Just so there isn't a concern that, there's a state statute that if you call yourself commissioner, you can help with your pay or whatever it might be. And so that is implemented throughout here. In this version of it, I realized actually we had referenced city council members in one of the other charter amendments, so I had a little clause that said, if this one passes and the other one passes, it magically changes the language in the other one to this, and that'll all work out fine. So.
I personally feel this is pretty much what I recall that we talked about, and these are the things we wanted. Any other discussion or anything that we need changed as we're relooking at it?
Are these changes to the language, do those all appear on the ballot?
So what's going to appear on the ballot is just going to be the question number, the ballot title, 15 words or less, and the ballot summary, 75 words or less, and then yes or no. And then actually it's going to be reprinted in Spanish.
So the actual changes, where do they appear?
They appear if somebody wants to go look for them. Okay. So they can find this ordinance or what have you. But that's why 101.161 of Florida statutes provides, you provide this summary, because obviously they can't reprint pages and pages and pages of stuff on the ballot.
And also, I know in speaking with Lisa Lewis, I think if everything fits on one page, we don't pay extra. If it goes to the next, do you have any indication right now how long this will be?
No idea what the ballot's going to look like, because we don't know what's coming.
Okay, so at that time.
I think there are at least some constitutional amendments the legislature and their infinite wisdom are playing with right now, and we won't know what those are going to be or anything else. So.
Mayor, I'd like to explain to the public of why this particular thing is being considered. Most other cities, it seems like, are moving to commission. The title commissioner is gender neutral. When I go to various things throughout the state and the city, the county, wherever, we are often called commissioners anyway, but Sometimes they will call us council members, but they will call us councilmen, they will call us councilwomen. They will have council member 2 words, council member 1 word, councilwoman 2 words, councilman 2 words. So this takes a lot of that away. In fact, we just went to an ethics session recently, and we were all called commissioners. All discussion was about commissioners. It was nothing to do with council members. So this is just bringing us in tune with most of the rest of the cities that I've experienced when I go to these various functions. But it also is, I think, important to be gender neutral. And commissioners are gender neutral. And the newspaper can't say council member or councilman or councilwoman when they're talking about someone. They will just say Commissioner Jones or Commissioner Smith. So there's nothing sinister in this. It's just trying to, I just want the people to understand that what's going on and what the reasoning is behind this.
Okay. Do we hear a motion to accept this ordinance?
I move to accept 2022-05.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? So we thank you very much. We just thought it was going to be a very long, drawn-out process, and you made it very, very easy. This seems very easy to understand, I think, on some of them. But anyway, thank you very much. So any other?
I have a question on a related issue.
Okay, Councilman Bryan has a comment.
I don't know whether you had a chance, but the previous city attorney went through and generated a lot of paper on trying to harmonize existing ordinances with the charter. Have you had a chance to look at that?
I did. I was previously provided, way back when this started, an extensively chopped up draft of a lot of this. And that informed some of the initial discussions that we had and trying to figure out what we're trying to really accomplish versus all the rest and so on. The other enterprise of basically looking through the code and seeing if there are pieces of the code that need to get synced up to the charter as it would be after you pass this. I have not participated in that evaluation.
Well, I guess the question is, do you think that's a worthwhile thing to do, to try to harmonize our ordinances with the charter?
I'd be glad to talk with Becky and John, who deal with your code on much more on a day-to-day basis, see how much they see. I will tell you that one important part that where review will be important and necessary will be with regard to your purchasing when and if this charter amendment does pass. So I would suggest that would be a great place to start. And I'll chat with them about anything else that's jumped out at them with regard to.
And that was really independent of whether we modified the charter or left it the same. There was still harmonization that needed to be done.
Yeah, and again, most of the documentation that I had gotten that had been prepared by Mr. Groot had been really directed towards, it was some substantial suggested thoughts related to the charter and so on. And then I shared with you my thoughts that tend not to change happy to glad in charters and so on. So.
Right. Okay, thanks.
All right.
Okay, so Sherry, do you want to take a, I just want to make sure this is a first reading, so there is no public comment?
There can be.
Is anyone?
You're welcome to open it for public comment.
Okay, and I normally do.
It's not a public hearing.
Okay, all right. Anyone have anything they want to add to this or any questions? Okay, if not, Sherry, can you take a roll?
Councilmember Politis?
Yes.
Councilmember Frislow?
Yes.
Councilmember Bryan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lindauer?
Yes.
Mayor Miller?
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, next we're going to go on to council comments. I had quite a few this evening. I'll try and get through them. Thank you very much for allowing us not to have a meeting on the first Tuesday of February. Myself, Economic Director Annex, and Assistant City Manager Swartzander went to Tallahassee, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. Just to share a little bit about, we picked out some of the bills that would be directly impacted to the city and spoke to the senators and House of Representatives about those. So one of the smoking that Councilman Bryan has been talking about, I did give my thanks to Representative Leake and Senator Wright. They were one that sponsored this special events that when we might be having the trucks again or any special event that comes along, it will give our officers more power to be able to control those. So it was a great experience and we tried to represent Volusia County very well. So thank you for being understanding about not having that. Next thing, wanted to thank Nancy and all of her staff for Casino Night. It was a fantastic night. We had, was it 184? Okay, 160, but it was a great night. We had a fun, and we're hoping that'll be an annual event. We're going to have a concert this Friday, February 25th, with food trucks. So come on out. It's supposed to be a beautiful evening, and we have all that big green space to enjoy and party. So try and do that. And I wanted to thank our Vice Mayor one more time for filling in for me. And I gave him 2 fun events to do. No hard ones, 2 fun ones. But those are my only comments. Councilman Bryan, what do you have for us this evening?
Just to follow up a little bit on the legislative update. Both the House and the Senate bills for allowing local governments to regulate smoking in parks and on beaches they've already gone through the 3 committees. And I believe it's tomorrow they're going to be voted on the House floor and the Senate floor. My guess is that they will pass. And I think they're fairly close to each other now, so there's probably not going to be a significant reconciliation effort. And so if the legislature passes it, I don't see any reason why the governor wouldn't sign it, and it would go into law on this 1st of July of this year. So it would give us the ability, if we chose, we don't have to do anything really, to regulate smoking in our parks and on the beaches to the extent that we don't conflict with any county ordinance on the beach. The second thing, I don't know how many of the council members know this, but there is a bill that's gone through. It's actually going to be voted on in the Senate tomorrow. And it still has one more committee in the House. So it would require all council members and the city manager to divulge in detail all your assets and liabilities and your net worth, including details about your income. So that's a whole lot more than, it's called Form 6. It's a whole lot more than what we're required to do on Form 1. So my take is that there'll be there could be a lot of qualified people who will choose not to run for local office if they have to divulge all that information.
Thank you. Anything else?
That's it.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, I just want to shout out to Reverend Bob, Reverend Melissa, the city staff members who participated, and the public safety for doing a great job on both the parade and the car show, the 2 things that I got tasked with that turned out to be really, really great events. I'm sure the public safety, I know they are already preparing for the truck week was supposedly going to be in Homestead, Florida. But there's been a revolt in the actual truck drivers the owners who say they're going to come to Daytona and we can't do anything about it. So I know public safety is preparing for it. I know they're coordinating with other organizations, and I hope one of them is the County for the Beach. Are you working with them too, Chief? Okay, good. Yeah.
All agencies around.
Yeah, because one of the reasons they said they didn't want to go to Homestead was because there was no beach, so they want to come here and tear up our beach. So anyway, we're going to do everything we can to discourage them and to make sure that they know that if they behave, they're welcome, and if they don't behave, there's consequences to pay.
Thank you. And just to add on that, I've received several emails and calls, and I try to call everyone back and explain. When it's a pop-up event on a social media site, there is nothing we can do to stop them. And we can put out, I think the last time we put out publicity, if you come, this is what's going to happen. But other than that, once they get here, I know I've talked to Captain Fowler and the chief several different times, and they have a plan. So we're just going to let them work their plan and support them. Councilman Frizzlin?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to the city staff for the follow-up on Treasure Island. I think I can speak for all the residents that tonight is a big night, that you got bids in for the demolition, and I think it can't happen fast enough. So thank you very much for all the follow-up that you guys are doing, and Fred, hats off to you.
Councilman Pilates?
To follow up on Rick's, I had an opportunity to speak to some of the people that were on behalf of the Treasure Island developers, and they complimented the staff and how professional and polite and courteous they were. They had their positions to argue with, but they had their positions to argue, but it was all, they said it was really a breath of fresh air negotiating with the city, and they said they don't see that often. So they really made us look good, so you guys look good.
Thank you for that feedback. Okay, next we're going to go on to audience comment. I do have one. Is it Bernadine Walsh? Bernadette Walsh. And Bernadette, I do see you have 3 items and you only get 3 minutes, so. Okay, great.
They're really quick.
Okay, if you can state your name again and your address for the record.
Bernadette Walsh, Cloverleaf North. I just wanted to give a shout out to the city and the mayor and everybody. This is my first meeting since before COVID. You guys have done a phenomenal job, and especially the guys who take care of all the properties. Great job. The first thing I think I had on there is building insurance. Everybody's condo building has doubled, gone up tremendously. So with all of the legislative connections that you have, is there anything that you can do to maybe bring some of these state politicians or the governor here for some type of a town hall so that we can address this as residents? It's incredibly expensive how much this has gone up. The next thing was the dog park. I feel like the dog park police. The big dog, people are bringing the big dogs in the little dog park because there's no more grass in the big dog park. And I know the big dogs all chew it up. And I love big dogs. I have a little dog, but I didn't know if there was anything you can do about that to maybe fix the big dog grass so they stay over there. Because I don't feel like having to keep telling people, you got to take your big dog in. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was I've been hearing some rumors that the townhouses, the new ones that they're building on the corner there, are going to be turned into rental units. Is that correct? Some developer from Miami is buying them all, and instead of being the single family that they're zoned for, they're going to all be rentals now. Is that correct?
I don't think we have any exact clarification on that. We also heard that same rumor. Stuart, do you have any update on that whatsoever?
Madam Mayor, we've reached out to the property owner, the developer, and he says that essentially he's just looking at all different offers. The city doesn't have any control over that. We're preempted by the state. So that means if you own a single family home or if you own a condo unit or whatever have you, you could essentially either rent it out because the city is preempted by the state. Some cities actually have regulations on the books prior to 2011 that allows them to control that. But in Shores, we didn't have anything in the books prior to 2011. So as a property owner, the developer can either do as he pleases in regards to who he sells the property to, and that new owner, whether it's an individual corporation or an individual homeowner, could essentially rent it out if they want.
Okay. The last meeting that I was here for was about this property. And the developer assured everyone that these would be single-family homes and developed in a way that was aesthetically blending with the neighborhood.
Well, there would still be single-family homes. It just matters whether, is that correct?
But and if the owner wouldn't live in there ever.
Okay.
So it's really not a single-family home. It's owned by now a corporation.
So there are townhomes, and whether they're rented out on a short-term or long-term basis, they're still townhomes. So in terms of someone living there permanently, the owner can decide, the developer can decide who he wants to sell it to, and that person who's purchasing it doesn't even have to disclose that, because that's a private property right issue.
Okay, so he could collectively sell them all to the same person? There would not be all of those individual real estate transactions then?
Do you want to, I don't know the answer to that.
No, I was looking to you.
We're concerned about that because, that's a lot of people coming and
And you know
going.
what I'm going to ask you to do too is normally when you come up for audience comments, it's, your comments and we don't, really shouldn't be answering them. Why don't we, you set up something that maybe sit down with Stuart
Okay,
and
that's great.
do
That's
that.
perfect. Sure, absolutely, happy to do that. Thank you for your time, I
Thank you
appreciate
so
that.
much, we appreciate it. Okay, do we have any other items recommended for the next agenda besides the obvious ones that?
There's some more comments.
Sorry?
There's some more comments.
Oh, Tony, do you want to come up and make a comment?
Yes, on,
Oh, you'd have to come up to the
Okay, I'm
podium
sorry.
and you have to fill out a form.
no, okay, okay. Good evening, everybody. Oceans 25, Tony Remazuski, 4 Oceans West. We had a situation over there, as we come out of 4 Oceans West and go left, the sidewalk, the developer there has put up a sign saying sidewalk closed. That's been going on for roughly a good 2 weeks. I called the zoning officer, the code enforcement officer yesterday to ask her what was going on over there, why the sidewalk is closed, and she said, I will speak to the developer and I'll get back to you today. So this morning she called and she said it's going to remain closed for 3 more weeks. And the reason is that they broke open the sidewalks there for the entrance and the exit. And that, let me see, I want to make sure that what she said. She said that he's waiting for something from the county to approve everything that is done. And so roughly, she said, Tony, it could be 3 weeks, that more, 3 weeks starting from yesterday on it. So, but it's a great inconvenience for us who live there when we have to walk back out and we can't walk and we have no sidewalk on the other side, so we have to walk in the street. Dangerous for people. Our recommendation, go out and go to the right and walk south and find an open space there. So that was the end. She didn't add anything else. I said thank you and that was it. But I just think that we're being put through a great inconvenience on this here. I don't know if the council, mayor, you could look into this here and see what can be done. But if you'll see the sign as you walk out, sidewalk closed.
All right, thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Stuart, can you look into that for us, please? Follow up. Okay, thank you. Any other agenda items? Tony, would you fill out one of these forms, please, for our public record? Thank you. Items are recommended for next agenda besides the ones that we know will go on to second reading?
I have no.
Okay. If not,